Good evening and welcome. It's nice to see this many people here that were willing to give up watching the Seahawks unless you're taping it. I'm Marilyn Perkins, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin counties. We are an organization open to all citizens, men and women, 18 and older. Norm, raise your hand. See, we do have a male member here tonight. We have a sign-in sheet in the back. If any of you are interested in League at all and would like more information or have us send you our newsletter, just put your name on. There's a white sheet back there by the League of Women Voters sign. The League is very pleased once again to be partnering with the Tri-City Herald, the Associated Students of CBC, and the City of Richland and Mike Charbonneau, who is recording this so it can be on TV and YouTube and the Richland website. So there'll be lots of opportunities, hopefully, for people to view it. And also, John Funfar in Pasco has helped us a lot with the planning and execution of these forums. And the channel for Richland is channel 192, though I understand that can be up to change at times. So. But for now, it's going to be on channel 192. We will be taking written questions from the audience. So if you have a question, Kay and Norm will be looking, and just raise your hand and they'll collect the question. You can write a question for a particular race if you want to, but both candidates will answer it. You can't write it to just one person. And if you want all the candidates to answer that, we can try and do that too. My first question was one that we could ask all of them. Depending on how long they take to answer, we'll try and get through at least 4 to 6 questions per race. Luckily today I wrote up 18 questions for the school board. So if we don't get enough from the audience, we will use some of the ones that League members and myself have created. Some of them we've taken from our archives. Some things don't change much over time. We ask that your questions not be of a personal nature and that they pertain to an issue and not to a particular candidate. We have allowed all the candidates to have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then we'll move on to the question and answer period, and then we'll have closing statements. And we'll divide up the hour and try and give these people a good half hour or a little more, and the second set of candidates will have 15 to 20 minutes. So we'll do position 5. Are you 3, 4? Right. Okay. So position 5 will come up after these 2 sets of candidates are finished. So with that, I would like to introduce the candidates, and they're sitting in the order I put them. And without me looking at their name tags, but I do have a sheet that had their names on it. Okay, we have Ron Higgins, Rick Donahoe, Brett Amidon, and Jill Olson. And we're gonna, the opening and closing was determined by when their birthdays are. And we'll just leave it at that. So, the first opening statement will be by Ron Higgins.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ron Higgins. I'm running for Richland School Board Position 3. I'm a retired engineer from the Department of Energy with 2 master's degrees. I was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot in Vietnam, retiring from the reserves as a lieutenant colonel. I moved to Richland in 1978, been married to my wife Deborah since 1983. I have 2 grown children, both Richland High School and Columbia Basin College graduates. I've been a Boy Scout leader, youth soccer referee, Union Gospel Mission volunteer, and Red Cross blood platelet donor. After retiring in 2009, I began substitute teaching and earned a Washington State teaching certificate with a math endorsement in 2010. I have taught in 6 Washington State school districts, including Richland, and have taught in all grades from preschool through high school, including bilingual and special education. I have taught in every public high school and middle school in the Tri-Cities, including Delta, Tri-Tech, the alternative high schools, and the Juvenile Justice Center. I have taught multiple subjects, including math, science, language arts, and history. I have taught in all elementary schools in Pasco and many elementary schools in Kennewick. I've also worked as a school bus driver. In November 2014, I temporarily moved to Los Angeles to take care of my wheelchair-bound son, who was working full-time while finishing his MBA at USC. There I obtained my California teaching credential in math and worked as a substitute teacher in the inner city of Los Angeles for both public and charter schools. My teaching experience in a multitude of different settings has allowed me to see firsthand what is occurring in our schools. Although I noticed opportunities for improvement in the Richland schools, I've generally been encouraged by the way that teachers, staff, students, and administration interact with each other and the condition of the facilities. Many of the public schools in Los Angeles were in disrepair, and the learning environment was nothing short of chaotic. The charter schools, where the administration imposed strict behavior and academic performance standards for their students, were much better. Unfortunately, the federal government is planning to impose nationwide some of the policies that have destroyed a generation of students in Los Angeles. I will resist these federal edicts and will endeavor to protect the students' health, safety, and privacy rights, ensure that academic standards are maintained, and that we, as a community, maintain control of our children's education. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on to your opponent, Rick Donahoe.
Hello, my name is Rick Donahoe. I'm running for position 3 on the Richland School Board. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum today. I've been serving on the Richland School Board for the last 5 years. I was a teacher, an engineer, and then a project manager for the last 25 years. I have 3 college degrees, and a year ago received my education administrative credential from WSU. I'm currently the CEO of the Children's Reading Foundation, a national educational nonprofit organization serving over 100 schools in 28 states. I believe in serving all students, teachers, and schools in our growing district. I have no personal agenda to be on the school board. Public education is a highly personal issue for parents. They send their children off to school for 12 years and expect their children to be served and taught by caring, professional teachers in a safe environment. As a board member, I want to make sure that our teachers have the training, curriculum, and educational resources to do their very best. Excellent instruction from a caring teacher results in improved student learning, and student learning is the primary goal of our schools. I'm committed to the Richland School District mission statement, which is to prepare students to be critical thinkers, passionate learners, responsible members of society, and successful in the global community. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to position 4, and we will begin with Jill Oldson.
Hi, my name is Jill Oldson, and I am running for Richland School Board District position number 4. Again, I also want to thank you all for coming and for giving us an opportunity to tell each one of you a little bit about ourselves. I moved to Richland 17 years ago. My husband was a Richland High School graduate, grew up in this area, several brothers and sisters, all from this area. I have, sorry, let me regroup. I guess the biggest thing I want to let you know is I have 2 kids in the school district right now. When I first moved here, I was working in the hospitality industry after moving from Los Angeles and Seattle area with a degree in psychology. After I moved here and got married, we had our first child, at which time I quit working and decided to be a stay-at-home mom. During that time period, as soon as my children were old enough to enter school, they both enrolled and have continued to go through the Richland School District. From that point in time, I have been incredibly dedicated and involved in the school system. And I think the thing that I want to reiterate more than anything is that our students and our teachers are our next generation and the next generation to build and grow, and we need to make sure that those kids have the public education and environment which encourages them to learn and entices them to learn, and we have the teachers that have the skills and the ability to do that for our students. I was involved, both my kids started at Badger and then they went to White Bluffs, great schools. I was involved in the PTO there as president, and then in the last year I also substituted in the schools so that I could get a firsthand knowledge and feeling for exactly what's going on, because I think it's a completely different environment being a parent and seeing what's going on versus actually being in the system. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll finish up with Brett Amidon.
All right, I'm Brett Hamadin. I grew up in Richland, received a master's degree in statistics at BYU. Currently, I work at PNNL as a statistician and a technical team lead for the Applied Statistics and Mathematics group. I teach introductory statistics at WSU Tri-Cities as an adjunct faculty member. I also serve as treasurer for the Tri-City Youth Choir, and I currently have 2 kids in the Richland schools and 2 recent graduates of Richland. I've really enjoyed growing up here in this community and purposely came back to raise my family here. I feel it's important to serve in the community, and education's always been important to me, so I decided to run for school board. I feel that students should be our #1 priority, so it's important to keep class sizes smaller, give teachers the resources necessary, and to help them feel respected and appreciated, and make sure that our education continues to be of high quality. To do this, I will use my analytical skills to determine the best bang for our buck, make sure that our resources are properly allocated. To help the teachers feel respected, I want to establish a teacher reward program with my school board earnings, be able to purchase gift cards, hopefully with businesses that are willing to donate also, and allow students and parents to nominate the teachers. The awards will include a gift card and the write-up that shows the appreciation from the student and parent, and I hope to be able to award each nominated teacher with that. I also hope to use my analytical skills to figure out the best solutions for testing. We need to know the deficiencies in our instruction, and with proper testing, this can be done. However, we don't need so much focus on testing that it interferes with instruction. Also, graduation should not be based on standard tests. It should be based on the classes they took and the grades they received. Growing up in Richland and now living in West Richland, I feel that I'm in a unique position to represent both communities. I feel that my teaching experience and my analytical mind will help me better serve our community and our school district. I will always push for complete transparency of the thoughts and actions of the school board and respect the community I represent and listen to your concerns. Thanks.
Thank you. I might mention, they had 2 minutes. We're giving them a 15-second warning, and when the stop sign comes up, they don't have to stop immediately. They just have to finish their thought, and most candidates are very good about doing that. Okay, we're going to move on, and we'll use the first question. Are there any other questions that are ready from the audience? Okay, well, we've got one, and we'll start with Mr. Higgins. And it is, what are your views on bringing creation science or intelligent design into the science classes?
My view, that is, we teach the truth. And that is my view, whatever the truth leads to. I wasn't there when it was made. All we could do is see what the evidence says. When you start to extrapolate back beyond a few thousand years, you leave the realm of science and enter the realm of speculation, which in my view is beyond the scope of most science courses. You want to start making speculation, then you get into the realm of theology. I think that is an appropriate subject, but not in a science class. You teach the truth. Now, the truth may lead to other things, but you teach the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Donahoe.
Mm-hmm. So this is certainly not something you subject elementary kids to, but in a high school, I would have the students taught both evolution and creation and show them to 2 different subjects with proper documentation written by the people in those different fields to show that there are different thoughts out there, different viewpoints. I don't feel I'm going to tell them what to believe necessarily, but give them those options, have them understand that, have them write about it, have them talk about it, have them use their analytical skills and work on those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to keep careful records here, so we will move on to position 4 and start with Mr. Hamadin.
Same question.
Same question for this one.
Yeah, I definitely I tend to agree with what Rick just said there in that as they get older into high school, in any case, whether it's evolution versus creatism or anything, I think you need to be taught all sides of the stories so that people can gain their own opinions, so that we can learn from each other's opinions. I think we need to not be afraid of people that have different opinions than us. We should accept that, and we should learn from it, because other people have great opportunity to teach us. We might be able to learn something in the process. So I think it's important that we see all sides of the story.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Olson.
Actually, similar comments. I think it is important, as Rick had mentioned too, that's not necessarily appropriate in elementary school. However, when you do reach high school, I think it's important for those students to be able to have knowledge and information on that. And not just on creativism and evolution, but all the other different aspects of the religions that are out there and the other things. We need to make sure that they're educated so that they have the ability to form their own decisions in their own minds and have information presented to them in a fashion that it's a safe environment, it's an educational environment, and it's not a judgmental environment. Thank you.
Thank you. I had this worked out to have 6 people up here, but since we don't, you're going to go first on the next question. So we'll let you catch your breath.
I really like sweating up here.
See if I can find here a couple that are similar. Over the last few years, voters in our state have voted for smaller classrooms and fewer taxes. What would you say to a parent that complained about class size in the Richland district?
Wow. I'm probably one of those parents that has had issues with classroom size. The biggest problem I think that we have in this area is we are growing at such a fast pace, and we have so many families that are moving into this area that it's difficult for us to keep up with this. I think it's important that the school board, as they have done in going through and rebuilding and evaluating and looking at other areas to build. The other aspect on that too is funding issues. And I think it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that we hold people accountable both legislatively and with our taxes. Everybody, regardless of who you are or what you are, have a responsibility to help educate the youth in your society. And with that being said, it affects each and every person. If they're not being educated, then they're not contributing to the environment and the community that you live in. So yes, super important. It's really hard when the teachers have class sizes of 28 to 30, particularly primary education, kindergarten through 3rd grade, for them to be able to dedicate the amount of time and energy necessary for each one of those kids to learn what they need to do. So I think we just need to make sure we work as a community and hold those people accountable to providing that and making sure that we think ahead to provide the classroom and the space for that to have smaller class sizes.
Thank you. And Mr. Emiden.
I don't think you're going to get too much different opinion on this question, but I do definitely recognize the difference in teaching a class. With my statistics class I teach, I will have class sizes that range between 5, 15, and 30 students. And there's a huge difference in teaching 5 students versus 30, or 15 even versus 30. The class does so much better when I can have a lower amount of kids. So, I definitely feel for them that we do want smaller class sizes, but we have to be able to afford it. And so we have to look for ways to be able to get that money so we can allocate it that way. Through the legislation, through our own use of the resources to accomplish that. That's really about the only ways that we can do that. And so it's just pushing on those income streams to be able to do that and do what we can and tell them, hey, we're trying, and that's what we can do.
Okay, thank you. I'll give you a similar question, but slightly different aspect. Washington State has many limits on what taxes can be collected or raised. What would you support or lobby for that could increase state funding for education? And we'll begin with Mr. Donahoe.
So Washington surprisingly has one of the most regressive tax systems in the country. The percentage of income paid for high-level income earners is much less than it is for low-income earners. When I'm talking with the legislatures, they're aware of this. It's going to take quite a bit of work to reverse that trend to make it no longer regressive. So that's probably the biggest opportunity to find ways to do some additional funding for education. The McCrory decision still stands. There has not been adequate funding for basic education. The Constitution states it is the paramount duty of the state, paramount being the #1 duty, to fund basic education in Washington. That still has not happened. So taxes are going to probably be the answer. I don't see income taxes happening in this state for a long time. So I think fixing the regressive tax situation is the answer to providing more funds for education.
Okay, and Mr. Higgins.
This about the education and
Yeah, how we can raise more money in our state. What might you support at a state level to raise more money for education?
education is one of the most important things that we as a society do. But we have to also look at how much the taxpayer is willing to pay. There becomes an optimum point at which you go past that, and suddenly you get the point of diminishing returns. We have to look as a society and make our priorities such that we can stay within our budget. I would like to have a lot of things, but sometimes it's just beyond my economic ability. I would certainly like to have small classes. My daughter is an instructor at Washington State University Pullman. She's had 120 in her classes. That's quite a lot. It's an awful lot of admin burden. And I've taught myself, and I can tell you, the more students you have, the rougher it is. But there's a point that which the taxpayer will start being very, very upset, and we start losing levies and bond issues. So we have to look at that and find the optimum point where we can get this lowest class size with the least amount of money.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here for clarification from the audience about teaching creationism or a religious approach to human origins in the classroom. And people want, I guess, just a yes or no answer if you're in favor of that. And we'll start down here and go this way to add to what you said earlier.
Can you repeat the question?
Well, please clarify, did you really all suggest that teaching creationism, a religious approach to human origins in the public schools? And I know some of you mentioned high school and elementary, but...
Well, the way I look at it, we're here. How did we get here? The law of biogenesis says you don't get life from non-life. That was a law discovered by Louis Pasteur. Gregor Mendel discovered the laws of genetics. If you want to breed horses, you don't mate dogs. So there's, as far as extrapolating, how in the world did you get from one species to another? It gets beyond science. I don't think science should go beyond science into the realm of speculation. We're here, we teach the laws of science, and anything beyond that, you get into theology. That is a legitimate subject, but it's not valid in a science curriculum.
Okay. How long did he take, Polly? Okay, we'll try and, I said just yes or no, but we'll give you 45 seconds to...
Yes or no? All right, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We just have to be fair.
Okay.
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 You're next.
I stand by my previous answer. I would teach it as one of the options in high school environment. So the answer, I believe, is yes for me.
Okay. And Mr. Amidon?
I'd give the same answer as Rick. It's yes in that context.
Okay. And Mrs. Olson?
I would say yes, but in addition to yes, I think that if we are going to do that, we need to also make sure that there's other options available to individuals if that's not the only area. Because I think it's important that we educate individuals on all different aspects of that, not always necessarily just a single entity.
Okay, I'm going to
So
mix...
yes.
Okay. I'm
Yes,
going to mix
plus.
it up a little.
Yes,
We'll move
plus.
on. There are other good subjects here. And I said you'd start next, but we'll make you start so that
Okay.
she didn't have to... She can catch her breath. And we'll ask all of the candidates this question. What are your views of Common Core and its value in education?
So I think it's really important that we establish some sort of a curriculum, but I also think that curriculum should come from the school district, the teachers, the parents, maybe even the students. They should be helping with that curriculum, and so that we have a good curriculum. Now, some of that may come from the national, I think of the Common Core as more of the national government, and there may be some aspects that are useful from that, and we should glean from that. But I've also sat there trying to help my kids with math problems that are taught through some Common Core method, that being a statistician and taking a lot of math in college, I can't figure out how they want me to answer the question. And so I think if it goes beyond what a math degree can't get you an answer to, then I think we need to be careful. And so I think we need to really watch what we're doing on the Common Core and take the things that are useful to us and get rid of the things that aren't so useful.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Olson.
Common Core. Interesting that you mentioned Common Core. My understanding of Common Core is basically that there's a set of standards that are based across the nation that say that any third grader moving from Nebraska to Washington should have certain things that they should know. If you're moving from Ohio to Hawaii, there are certain things as a fifth grader that you should know. So that when you're moving from school to school and you're doing this, your teachers and the facility people and the administration at those schools have the ability to understand what you know. Each district is responsible for their own curriculum. What curriculum they choose to instill and implement the Common Core requirements is my understanding that that's based. So the district still has control over what is taught, how it's taught, what method it's taught. It's just that there are certain guidelines along Common Core that need to be known. So say that, what was the exact question again?
What is your stance on charter schools? Oh, no.
No.
I leaked
That's
the
okay.
question. No.
It was whether or not, so I guess the thing that I think
Common Core.
how at Common Core is that Common Core is just that. I don't think people have a problem with saying that your child needs to know a certain thing by the time they end fourth grade or by the time they end fifth grade. That's basically as simple as Common Core is. The curriculum that goes into teaching those things is what I think sometimes people are questioning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and we'll move down and find out your views on the Common Core and its value in education. And we'll start with Mr. Comfort.
Mr. Comfort's over there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking. See, we plan on having 6, and I've confused myself, so we'll start with Mr. Donahoe.
Okay. So Common Core exists. By the way, we now have Washington State standards that were adopted from the Common Core. So Common Core are standards. They are not curriculum. Common Core has it is the most misquoted environmental initiative there is currently across the country.
Yes.
Personally, I'm in favor of having standards for children. Right now, they're math and ELA, English Language Arts standards. These standards are much more rigorous than what I had when I grew up. So students are going to have to figure out how to apply mathematics to solve problems. They're going to have to read different perspectives in nonfiction, find the facts, and then write about those themselves. There's a lot more analysis that's required, a lot more rigor on the students. Our teachers are already doing that. We had our first results of our Smarter Balance Assessment came back to us. Richland is doing just fine with those. Who's not doing fine are students in poverty. That's a whole separate issue, but I'm in favor of Common Core. It is now truly the Washington State standards. It is not a curriculum, but I am very much in favor of what Common Core represents in terms of standards, higher, more analytical, more rigorous standards.
Okay.
There's a good chance, because I completely disagree with Rick. I think that I do not trust the competence, the integrity, or the agenda of the people who put that together. By the way, I'm certainly not alone with that. There's a number of people in both political parties. I can think of one, the Democratic Party has come out strongly against it in this state. I have been in teaching math in, as I say, in a number of different situations. I was in teaching math today in Pasco High School. There are children that I'm teaching in senior high school who do not know their multiplication tables. So all this myth about you go from Hawaii to Massachusetts and you'll know the same thing. There are kids in the classroom. There's a tremendous gap, and it's not necessarily income gap. When I was in Los Angeles, we had people from down in the down the South Central, very high poverty areas. They would go to charter schools just to get out of the LA Unified School District, and they did extremely well. And I don't think the poverty has an awful lot to do with it. It's the commitment of the parent and the commitment of the student and the commitment of the administration. By the way, I think the Richland School District should be commended about their commitment to the students. But I'm completely against Common Core. I think we have very bright people here who can put together a very good curriculum. We could use that maybe as a guide of what they ought to learn, But I'll tell you this, I don't need somebody at the United Nations telling us how to raise our kids and what to teach them. Thank you.
Thank you. Take a deep breath, and you can answer first on the next
Okay.
question. Mr. Higgins touched on this for all. What is your stance on charter schools?
Well, having taught in the Los Angeles area, down in South Central, in the hood, and by the way, I enjoyed the kids, most of them, some few outliers that always make you earn your pay, made $120 a day. But kids from the same area going to charter schools, and I have some pictures there I can show you. They might have much more rigorous standards of behavior and academics. There are children who would go, they'd take a bus to the train, take the train to downtown LA and walk a half a mile, because I walked with them, just to get out of the LA Unified School District and get into schools that really cared about their education. And I didn't think that some of the public schools, at least down there, did. I don't feel the same way here. I like what's going on in Richland. But I think it's good to have an option if parents want to take to have a different venue in which to teach their kids. I've seen what when the wheels fall off of the education system, it's nice to have a safety net that you can go to. Charter schools will provide that safety net. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Donahoe?
Yep, so charter schools have been studied across the country for decades, really decades. There are some great ones, there are some failing ones. The ones currently in Washington State are not meeting the standards, so the court has decided to shut them down even though they're still in existence today. So in terms of alternatives for kids, Richland School District has an alternative high school. We have a home link school, which is for parents to home study with their school in coordination with the school itself. We have Delta High School is another alternative for the kids to use. So personally, I'm not in favor of charter schools if they do not have to meet all the same requirements as a public school. Funds are being taken away from public schools to fund charter schools, but they do not have to meet all the same standards as public schools do. So there's a disparity there that I disagree with.
Okay. And I think I lost track over here. Who went first last time? You did? Oh, you did?
have twice.
Okay. So we'll have you, someone's keeping track. Okay.
I'm a
Statistician.
sorry.
Mrs. Olson, you get to go first.
Thank you. I also am not a big proponent of charter schools. I find it challenging that we would try to introduce another form of public education when we are unable to properly fund the current public education systems that we have. If, as Rick mentioned, we have a whole variety of different things within our district that offer alternative with River's Edge and Delta and the HomeLink school option. I just think that until we have enough funding to pay teachers the way teachers should be paid and get class sizes the way class sizes should be, and make sure that kids have books that they need and they have the computer systems that they need and they have the HAV systems that they need in their schools, that we can't take those funds, those limited funds that we have for public education, and spread it so thinly that we're not good at any of it.
Okay. And now, Mr. Emiden.
Okay. So we have some friends that are in Denver, and the charter schools there make a world of difference to them for their situation in their place. But with that said, in our area, I don't see any need to go that direction at all. I think our schools are doing great. There's great alternatives here, and we just need to keep that going as it is. So I don't think it really applies to us, but there are communities out there that thrive using charter schools, but it's not for us.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to come back over here and let you start on the next question, and I'll ask you a slightly different question. But we have a question from the audience, which says, what lessons do you think were learned from the strikes of Pasco and the possible one that was going to be in Prosser?
So we talked about this at the last school board meeting. Kevin Hayes, who's our representative from Richland Education Association, came to the board and board meeting with his team, and we thanked the administration for the manner in which the negotiations were held. So we finished up right before school started with our education association. I spoke at that point in time and said, the next set of negotiations begins right now. It's a 2-year contract, but the next set of negotiations begins right now to maintain that trust and to keep that communication open. You can't wait until the very end for negotiations to begin if you haven't lived in a world of trust for the 2 years before it. So for me, it's maintaining communication with the teachers, with the administrators, and the school board, to the extent possible, that there are issues out there. How are we going to address the issues of poverty? We have 1,000 additional students in Richland in the last 2 years. That's more than a whole new school to be built immediately, if you will. It's difficult. It's a good problem to have, but it's difficult. So how are we going to take care of the teachers? How are we going to make sure they have the right curriculum? We have a good teaching and learning department now that is including parents in curriculum development. So overall, I just think we're on a good track and continue this method. So,
Thank you. And Mr. Higgins?
I agree with Rick on that. You have to have a good communication with the teachers and the staff that who have to fulfill that contract. I think Richland did a very good job. I work in Pasco virtually all the time as a substitute. I've talked to the number of teachers. In fact, the head of the Pasco Teachers Union was a fellow in my Spanish camp, so I know him. We have to have good communication, find out what the issues are, and address them. I think the school board has done a very good job, and I would hope to continue that. I think it's good. It's a very good, in fact, it's essential that you have good communication with the staff. And I think the Richland School Board has done a good job at that, and I will continue that if I get elected. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll let you answer it a little bit differently in that neither of you have been on the school board yet, but how would you characterize the district and administration's relations with the REA, the Teachers Union in Richland? And can you give any examples to illustrate why you feel that way? And we'll start with Mr. Amadin, because you want me to read that again?
Yeah, why don't you
Okay.
read it again?
How would you characterize Richland's and the administration's relations with the REA, the Richland Education Association, the teachers union here in Richland? And can you give any examples of why you feel that it's good or bad or?
Well, I think it's generally good. I mean, as Rick talked about, we've had good success in discussing in getting contracts in place, and that hasn't been a problem. My discussions with the REA when I was interviewed by him tended to be that way. I have a brother-in-law that is a teacher, and he's indicated much of the same. But I think it's really important to keep that relationship, and I think you do that through, as they talked about, communication. Communication is very important, but I also think it's important to be transparent and to make sure that there aren't any hidden agendas in our goals. We need to be able to lay everything out on the table and come up with a plan together and be able to do that as contracts roll around.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Olson?
Yes, I also think that the relationship between the school district and the administration and the teachers' unions and the teachers is very positive. They've been very successful in being able to get their contracts negotiated and in place well before the limits have always been set. And she had mentioned if there was an example of that, and I have to use the same example that Rick had mentioned when the REA president attended the last school board meeting and made a big point to thank the teachers as well as the administration for being so easy to work with and making resolutions and compromising and doing the things. And bottom line is, as long as that's there, that has to be a good relationship, and that communication has to be there in order for the teachers and the administration to be able to give the kids exactly what they need.
Okay, thank you. It's time to move to our closing statements, and they have just 1 minute to convince you that they should be elected. And we are going to begin with position 3 and Mr. Ron Higgins.
I wish to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to inform the voters of my background, experience, and vision that I have for the education of the children of Richland. My firsthand experience in various educational settings and continued interest in learning about the educational issues occurring nationally by networking with educators across the country complement the skills of the other school board members and makes me uniquely qualified to assess the appropriateness of federal edicts, many of which are made by people who have little classroom experience. I strongly believe that the primary goal of education is to impart communication, computation, and civic skills to our youth while protecting their health, safety, and constitutional rights, and will work to ensure that the Richland School District never loses focus of this goal. I believe that parents are the ultimate authority for their children's education, that educational decisions are made at the local level, and that we should implement common sense, not Common Core. My name is Ron Higgins. I'm running for Richland School Board Position 3, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you. And Mr. Rick Donahoe.
I recently read a book by Robert Putnam, who's a Harvard professor, titled Our Kids, The American Dream in Crisis. In his book, he states, education is the most valuable resource we can have in our knowledge-based economy. By 2020, 65% of jobs will require some type of post-secondary education, either a college degree or a skills certificate. We need to prepare our children today for a future of being able to work collaboratively, communicate well, solve problems by working on a team, understand the need for different perspectives, and work in the global community. Parental involvement is critical for a child's success in school. We want our parents as active leaders in their child's education, and we want to continue to earn the trust of our supportive community. I look forward to serving parents and teachers, our community, and especially our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move to position 4. And our first speaker will be Mrs. Jill Olson.
Hi, again, thank you all for coming. My basic agenda for running for school board, I don't have a big list of credentials. I'm a mom, I have kids in school, and I think one of the most important things we need to do is teach kids to love to learn again. We need to give teachers the ability to control their classroom. We need to give those educated to educate the power to control and run their classroom and take care of the kids as they see fit, to nurture them and to guide them and to give them the opportunities that they need. It's also super critical that we try and get as many parents involved. Parent involvement in school is so critical. You can tell a huge difference between the kids that have the ability to have the students involved. And if we don't have that, then we need to ask the community to help those families that don't have the opportunity to do that. I really ask for your vote. I just think it's important that we teach our kids to love to learn again and give them every opportunity that they can for a great education.
And finally, Mr. Brent Amidon.
Okay, I'd like to thank those who hosted this event, and I'd like to thank Mary Guay for many years of service. If you'd like more information about me, please visit my website. It's www.brett4rsb.com. In closing, I'd like to say Jill and I have a lot of similarities. We're both parents of kids. But in closing, I'd like to focus on 3 differences. First of all, I grew up here in Richland, now live in West Richland, and I think this makes me uniquely positioned to represent both communities. The second, I'm a statistician. My analytical skills will be useful in evaluating performance, both educationally and fiscally. And then third, I believe with proper baselining, we can use testing to understand our educational performance. This helps us to identify our deficiencies in curriculum and in instruction. Once we understand our weaknesses, we can make needed improvements. It's important that these tests are done for these reasons, but not to evaluate the students. That should be done throughout the school year in the classroom. I promise to make your children and mine the top priority of this district. Tonight I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And join me in thanking these 4 candidates and